Dưới đây là kịch bản script cho phần intro mở đầu, dialogue outro kết thúc đã được tối ưu hóa cho 11 Labs. Vì đây là lời dẫn của người kể chuyện narrator host, chứ không phải nhân vật trong truyện. Giọng đọc cần trầm ấm, chuyên nghiệp và chậm rãi để dẫn dắt người xem vào thế giới của video. 1. Kid Bang Intro mở đầu. Copy donate vào 11 Labs. Winter. It's a season of contradictions, isn't it? On the surface, we think of it as a time for comfort, warm blankets, hot cocoa, holidays spent with family, and the safety of our own homes. There is something undeniably beautiful about a world covered in white. The way the snow blankets the trees, the way the ice glitters under the streetlights. But there is a darker side to the cold, because snow doesn't just cover the ground. It muffles sound. It swallows footprints. It isolates us. When a blizzard hits, the world shrinks down to the four walls of your house or the inside of your car. The roads empty out, the neighbors retreat indoors, and in that silence, in that blinding white void, you are truly alone. Tonight, I have gathered three terrifying, true stories that will make you rethink the safety of the winter season. These aren't stories about ghosts or monsters under the bed. These are stories about real people, people just like you, who found themselves trapped by the snow and hunted by something far worse than the cold. From a remote worker realizing he isn't alone in his locked house, to a driver stranded at a desolate roadside diner with a stranger who has no intention of letting him leave, and a delivery driver lured deep into the frozen woods for a drop-off that doesn't exist. So, before we begin, I want you to do something for me. Check your window, make sure it's locked, pull the curtains tight, turn off the lights, put on your headphones, and get comfortable. Let the snow fall outside. You're safe in here, aren't you? Let's begin. I'm 28 now, but this happened 2 years ago, back when the concept of home safety was something I took for granted. It was the week leading up to Christmas. You know that specific feeling in the air? That heavy, gray stillness that screams a storm is coming. I work in tech, and my company had a pretty loose policy on remote work. I had managed to stack up enough PTO and remote days to take the entire week off from the office. My plan was simple: hibernation. I wanted to sleep in, drink excessive amounts of coffee, and finish my projects late at night while the rest of the world slept. The forecast called for a massive winter storm to hit our town, one of those historic blizzards that shuts down the interstate. By noon on Tuesday, the first flakes started falling. I sat at my desk on the second floor watching the world turn white. It was peaceful at first, but as the hours dragged on, the wind changed. It stopped whistling and started howling, slamming against the vinyl siding of my house like a physical blow. By 4 p.m., the sun had vanished completely. The heavy cloud cover made it look like midnight. I had planned to make a run to the grocery store, but looking at the snow piling up on the driveway, already a foot deep, I decided to stay put. I was safe inside, or so I thought. Around 7 p.m., I was deep in flow state, coding away at my desk. I had left the window blinds open because, despite the cold, I loved watching the snow fall. It was hypnotic. Then, something broke the pattern. A light. It wasn't a car headlight. It was too focused, too thin. It was a beam cutting through the swirling snow in my side yard. I leaned forward, pressing my face close to the cold glass. It was definitely a flashlight. I watched as the beam swept over my AC unit, then traced the line of the fence. My first thought wasn't fear. It was confusion. It's 10 degrees below zero. Who is out there? I watched for maybe 10 seconds. Logic kicked in. It's probably a neighbor. Maybe the Henderson's dog got out again? I convinced myself that was it. The light turned off. Or maybe they went around the corner. I couldn't tell. The darkness swallowed everything again. I sat back down, put my headphones on, and tried to focus. 2 hours passed. The house was groaning under the wind. Old houses make noise. They settle. The wood contracts in the cold. I was used to it. But then, I heard a sound that didn't fit. Thump. It wasn't the wind. It was a heavy, dull thud, and it came from inside the house. Downstairs. I took my headphones off, My heart started a slow, heavy rhythm in my chest. I listened. For a long minute, there was nothing but the wind. You're being paranoid, I told myself. It's just the storm. I stood up and walked to the landing of the stairs. I peered down into the pitch-black living room. Hello? I called out. My voice sounded small, swallowed by the empty house. No answer. I was about to turn back to my office when it happened. A loud, sharp click. Instantly, the hum of the refrigerator stopped. The router lights on my desk died. The heating vents stopped blowing. The house plunged into absolute, suffocating darkness. The power was out. Okay, stay calm, I thought. It's a blizzard. Power lines go down. I needed to check the breaker box. In my house, like most homes in the Midwest, the breaker box is in the basement. I used my phone as a weak flashlight and began the slow descent down the stairs. The air was already getting colder. I reached the bottom of the main stairs and turned down the hallway that leads to the basement door. I was tracing my hand along the wall to keep my balance. That's when I froze. From the other end of the hallway, from behind the closed basement door, I heard a sound, metal scraping on metal. Then, the distinct creak of the basement door hinges. My blood turned to ice. I hadn't opened that door, which meant someone was already down there, and they were coming up. I couldn't run back up the stairs. The wood was too creaky. He would hear me. My only option was the guest bathroom, right next to where I was standing. I slipped inside, moving as silently as a ghost. I didn't dare close the door all the way. The latch would click. I left it cracked just an inch. I stood in the shower, trembling, holding my breath until my lungs burned. Thump, thump, thump. Heavy boots on the hardwood floor. Slow, deliberate. He walked right past the bathroom. Through the crack in the door, I couldn't see a face. It was too dark. I only felt the movement of air as he passed. He was inches away from me. He didn't check the kitchen. He didn't check the living room. He walked straight to the stairs and began to climb up to the second floor. Toward my office, toward where the light of my computer screen had been just moments ago. The realization hit me with the force of a truck. He wasn't robbing the house. He had cut the power to lure me out, or to blind me, and now he was going to the one room where he knew I would be. I didn't wait to see what he would do. As soon as I heard his footsteps reach the landing upstairs, I bolted. I ran through the dark kitchen, slamming my hip into the counter, but ignoring the pain. I burst into the garage, jumped into my car, and hit the door opener. Thank God the garage door had a battery backup. I peeled out of the driveway, drifting through the snow, and didn't stop until I was 3 miles away at a gas station. I used the SOS button in my car to call the police because my hands were shaking so bad I couldn't unlock my phone. When the police searched the house, the man was gone, but they reconstructed his movements. He had entered through a basement window. He had waited down there, and when he went upstairs, he went to my office, and then he went to my bedroom. He had a knife on him. They found a blade mark on my door frame where he had likely been holding it while looking inside. He knew the layout. He knew I was home. And to this day, every time a winter storm hits and the lights flicker, I find myself checking the basement door. I've driven the route from Minneapolis to Montana a dozen times. It's a long, lonely drive through the Great Plains, but I usually enjoy the solitude. Just me, my trusty Subaru Outback, and the open road. This trip was different. I left too late in the day. By the time I hit North Dakota, the sun had set, and the weather turned violent. If you've never driven in a plains blizzard, you can't understand the disorientation. It's not just snow, it's a white void. The headlights reflect back at you, creating a wall of light that blinds you rather than helps you see. My knuckles were white on the steering wheel. I had been driving at 20 miles per hour for an hour, and my nerves were shot. I needed to stop. I saw a faint yellow glow off exit 44. A sign barely visible through the sleet read, "Diner, open 24 hours." I pulled off. The parking lot was a sheet of ice. There were only 3 other cars there. One was a sedan buried under a foot of snow, clearly abandoned. The other 2 looked fresh, engines ticking as they cooled down. I parked and ran inside, the wind biting at my exposed skin. The diner was warm, smelling of stale coffee and frying grease. But the vibe was wrong. You know that feeling when you walk into a room and interrupt a serious argument? It was like that. There was a waitress behind the counter, wiping a spot that was already clean. Two men sat at the bar, 3 seats apart. When the door chimed, all three of them snapped their heads toward me. No smiles, no welcome in, just staring. I brushed the snow off my coat and sat near the window, away from the men. Coffee black, I told the waitress when she finally came over. She poured it without a word. Her hands were shaking slightly. I took a sip and glanced at the men. The one closest to the door was normal enough. Trucker hat, flannel jacket, looking at his phone. But the other guy, the one further down, he made my skin crawl. He was older, gaunt, with skin that looked gray under the fluorescent lights. He wasn't eating, he wasn't drinking. He was just staring at his reflection in the dark window. The silence stretched on for 10 minutes. The wind howled outside, rattling the plate glass. Finally, the normal guy in the flannel stood up. He threw a $10 bill on the counter. "Roads aren't getting any better," he muttered to no one in particular. "Gonna try to make it to the Motel 6 up the road." He walked out. Through the window, I watched him get into his truck. He sat there for a minute, presumably letting it warm up, and then his lights turned on. A moment later, the gray-skinned man stood up. He didn't pay. He just slid off the stool and walked out the door, following the first man. I sat there for another 20 minutes, just letting the warmth seep back into my bones. I made small talk with the waitress, asking about the storm. She was short with her answers, constantly glancing at the door. Eventually, I stood up to stretch and looked out the window to check the visibility. My heart stopped. Both trucks were still there. The first man, the one in flannel, was sitting in his driver's seat, but the car wasn't moving. No exhaust was coming from the tailpipe. And the second man, the creepy one, Tia, he wasn't in his car. "Check, please," I said, my voice trembling. I threw cash on the table, not waiting for change. Something was wrong. My lizard brain was screaming at me to run. I pushed open the door and the cold air hit me. I jogged to my Subaru, fumbling with my keys. I jumped in and locked the doors immediately. I turned the key. Silence. No crank. No click. Nothing. The dashboard didn't even light up. "Come on," I whispered, panic rising in my throat. I tried again. Dead. That's when I saw movement in my rearview mirror. Walking out from the tree line behind the diner was the gray-skinned man. He wasn't wearing a coat. He was walking slowly, methodically, through the knee-deep snow, and he was holding something in his right hand, a pair of wire cutters. He wasn't walking to his car. He was walking toward mine. I didn't think. I scrambled out of the passenger side door, tumbling into the snow, and sprinted back toward the diner entrance. I slammed into the glass door, nearly shattering it, and locked the deadbolt. "Call 911, I screamed at the waitress. "Do it now." She looked at my face, saw the terror, and grabbed the phone. Outside, the man reached the glass door. He didn't pound on it. He didn't yell. He just pressed his face against the glass, his breath fogging it up. He looked at me with those dead shark-like eyes. He smiled, just a little. Then, seeing the waitress on the phone, he turned around, calmly walked to his car, and drove off into the blizzard. It took the state troopers 40 minutes to reach us. They found the man in the flannel truck. He was dead, stabbed. But that wasn't the only thing. When they checked his truck, and then checked my Subaru, they found the exact same thing. The main ignition cables had been snipped clean. The gray man hadn't just been waiting. He had disabled our vehicles while we were inside. He had trapped us in the storm, turning that parking lot into his own personal hunting ground. I never drive that stretch of highway at night anymore. And I never, ever stop at empty diners. When you're a college student, winter break doesn't mean relaxing. It means working double shifts to pay for next semester's textbooks. That year, I was back in my hometown, driving for DoorDash. My hometown is one of those places where the suburbs bleed into deep, dense forests. It was 2 days after Christmas. The roads were slushy but drivable. The tips were good because nobody wanted to leave their warm houses. At 9:45 p.m., I got a ping, a $25 order. That's a unicorn order for a dasher. I accepted it immediately without checking the map closely. I picked up the food, 2 large pizzas and wings, and started driving. The GPS led me away from the well-lit subdivisions, past the old mill, and onto County Road 9. The street lights disappeared. The road narrowed. Eventually, Siri told me to turn left onto Blackwood Lane. It wasn't a lane. It was a gravel logging road, unplowed, winding deep into the woods. I drove for about 10 minutes, crawling at 5 miles per hour over the snow-packed gravel. The trees overhead blocked out the moon, creating a tunnel of darkness. Finally, the GPS said, "You have arrived." I stopped. There was nothing there. No house, no mailbox, no lights. Just a small clearing in the trees where the road ended. I sat there for a moment, engine idling. Maybe the GPS is wrong. I called the customer through the app. He picked up on the first ring. "I'm here," I said, trying to sound cheerful. "But I don't see a house." "You're at the clearing?" a voice replied. It was deep, raspy, like he had been gargling gravel. "Yeah, is your driveway hidden?" "The snow is too deep for cars," the man said. "My house is just down the footpath to your left, about 100 yards. You'll have to walk it." I looked to my left. There was a barely visible gap in the trees. No lights, just pure blackness. "Sir, I can't really leave my car," I said. "Safety policy." The tone of his voice changed instantly. "I tipped you $20, kid. Bring me the damn food. It's a 2-minute walk. Don't be lazy." I hesitated. I really needed that money, and I was terrified of getting a bad rating that would deactivate my account. "Okay," I sighed. "I'm coming." I hung up. I grabbed the pizza bag, locked my car, and turned on my phone's flashlight. The cold was biting. The snow crunched loudly under my boots. I walked into the tree line. The beam of my light bounced off the trunks of massive pines, 50 yards. No house, 70 yards. Still nothing. I stopped. The silence of the forest was heavy, pressing in on my ears. Then, snap. A twig broke. Not ahead of me, but behind me, to my left. I swung my flashlight around. "Hello?" Nothing but shadows dancing in the light. I started walking again, faster this time. "Sir," I yelled out, "I'm going to leave the food here if I don't see a light." I pulled my phone out to call him again. I watched the screen. Calling. Calling. Suddenly, I saw a light. It wasn't a porch light. It was a flashlight beam, turning on deep in the woods, maybe 50 feet away. But it wasn't steady. It flickered on, illuminated a figure standing behind a tree, and then clicked off. Simultaneously, the call on my phone disconnected. He wasn't in a house. He was out here, standing in the snow, watching me. The realization hit me so hard I almost dropped the pizzas. This was a trap. I spun around and sprinted. I didn't care about the noise. I didn't care about the food. I threw the pizza bag into a snowbank and ran for my life. I heard heavy footsteps crashing through the brush behind me. He wasn't being quiet anymore. He was chasing me, and I could hear his heavy breathing, the tearing of branches as he bulldozed through them. I burst out of the tree line and into the clearing. I fumbled for my keys, jamming the unlock button. I threw myself into the driver's seat and slammed the door lock just as a shadow emerged from the trees. I cranked the engine and threw it into reverse. The car lurched and dipped violently to the left. The steering wheel jerked in my hands. My tire. I didn't stop to look. I slammed on the gyrates, dragging the rim through the snow and gravel. The car fishtailed, struggling for traction. But the adrenaline made me drive like a rally racer. I sped down that logging road on 3 tires and a rim, sparks flying, terrified that he would have a shortcut to cut me off. I didn't stop until I hit the main highway. When I checked the car later, the tire hadn't popped from a rock. It had a clean 6-inch gash in the sidewall. He had been waiting at the clearing. He watched me arrive. He waited for me to walk into the woods, and then he circled back to slash my tire to make sure I couldn't leave. I don't deliver at night anymore. And if you order food to a place without a porch light, don't expect me to get out of the car. And that brings us to the end of tonight's collection. There is a common thread running through all 3 of these encounters that really unsettles me. It's the planning. In every single story, the antagonist didn't just stumble upon their victim. They waited. They watched. They cut the power lines. They slashed the tires. They severed the ignition cables. It's a chilling reminder that sometimes The most dangerous thing about winter isn't the freezing temperatures or the slippery roads. It's the opportunity that the weather provides to people with bad intentions. The storm gives them cover, the cold gives them an excuse, and the isolation gives them the confidence to strike. I hope these stories serve as a reminder to always trust your gut. If a situation feels wrong, like a silent diner, or a dark driveway, or a noise in the basement, don't ignore it. That instinct is there to keep you alive. Which story tonight sent the biggest chill down your spine? For me, it was the second story at the diner. The idea of being trapped in a blizzard with someone disabling your car is my worst nightmare. Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. If you enjoyed this video and want to hear more true scary stories, please consider hitting that like button. It really helps the channel grow. And if you haven't already, subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss an upload. I have a lot more stories to share with you as the nights get longer. Stay safe out there. Keep your doors locked, and I'll see you in the next one.